Thomas Aquinas was a 13th century philosopher and theologian. His natural law theory of morality is premised on the idea that we all share a common human nature, and that from this human nature we can derive moral principles, and these are discoverable with the use of reason. Aquinas distinguishes between 4 types of laws. There's the eternal law that refers to the principles by which God made and controls the universe. Influenced by the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, Aquinas thinks that our universe is teleological. And for Aquinas, that means that every natural thing has been created or designed with a purpose and with a natural tendency to fulfill that purpose. For example, an acorn has the purpose of becoming an oak, and given the right conditions, that's exactly what an acorn will become. Natural law, put simply, is the moral law that is derived from our human nature and is discoverable through reason. The capacity to reason is very important for Aquinas, and it is related to our purpose. So just as how an acorn is designed to become an oak tree, we are designed to use reason. With this reason, we can discover what is good for us. And the first thing that we discover is the synderesis principle, which says that the good is to be done and pursued and evil is to be avoided. Aquinas sees this principle as a self-evident principle that is innate to our human nature. He then says that this principle forms the basis for all the other moral precepts of natural law, which are called the primary precepts, and we'll come to in a moment. But very quickly, we have 2 other laws. So there's the human law. The human law just refers to all of the laws that humans have created for themselves, and finally the divine law, which is the moral teachings and rules that we find that have been revealed to us in the scriptures, like the Bible. Now, by using our reason and studying our human nature, we can derive a set of universal and absolute moral principles. These are known as the primary precepts. There's 5 of them. The way I remember them is with the acronym PREGS. So we've got P, preservation of life, R, reproduction, E, education of children, G, to know and worship God, and S, to live in an ordered society. From these primary precepts, we can derive more specific moral rules, and these are called the secondary precepts. So if we want to know if, say, a euthanasia is morally right or wrong, we have a look at the act of a euthanasia, and we see if it would be supported by the primary precepts or if it would go against the primary precepts. And with a euthanasia, it's clear to see that it goes against the primary precept, preserve life. Therefore, a euthanasia is morally wrong according to the natural law theory. And while the primary precepts are universal and absolute, the secondary precepts can have an element of relativism to them. They can depend on time and place. So, for example, just a few years ago, you wouldn't have the secondary precept socially distance in order to reduce transmission of COVID in order to preserve life, because COVID didn't exist a few years ago. And this is not to say that we always derive secondary precepts from primary precepts correctly. Influenced by the 4th and 5th century theologian and philosopher Augustine, Aquinas thinks that our human nature has been disordered by original sin. As a result, we'll sometimes derive secondary precepts from primary precepts erroneously, and when we do this, he calls those apparent goods. What we really want to be pursuing is real goods, goods that are properly derived from the primary precepts. Aquinas also makes a distinction between the exterior and the interior act. So the exterior act is the action itself, and the interior act is the motive or intention behind the action. Aquinas is not a consequentialist. He doesn't place any importance on consequences, but he does place a lot of more importance on intention, and this plays a big role in his doctrine double effect. So, what about killing in self-defense? Imagine you're in a kill or be killed situation, a maniac is trying to kill you, and this is interesting because if you were to kill them in self-defense, you've preserved your life, but you haven't preserved their life. You've done the opposite. You've just destroyed their life. And if you didn't defend yourself, you would have preserved their life by not killing them, but you wouldn't have preserved your life. So whatever you do, you are doing something that's supported by the primary precepts and also goes against the primary precepts. So you have this weird moral dilemma. And this is why it's called the doctrine of double effect, right? Because you have, whatever you do, you have a good effect and you have a bad effect. There's a double effect. Crucial to the doctrine of double effect is this idea of intention. Aquinas makes another distinction between intention, what you intend to happen, and what you can foresee happening. It says these 2 things, they're not the same. So just because you can foresee such and such, it doesn't mean that you intend such and such. For example, when you are taking notes, say in class, your intention is to record some information. It's not your intention to run out of ink, right? But you can foresee that you will run out of ink eventually if you write enough notes. But that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you just intend to record information. And we can say the same sort of thing about killing in self-defense. So you can foresee that if you stab the maniac with a kitchen knife, they might die. But you didn't intend for them to die, you just intended to save your life. So, central to the doctrine of double effect is this idea that as long as your intention is good, as long as you intend the good effect, and you do not intend the bad effect, your action can be morally justified according to the doctrine of double effect. There is a little bit more to it now, it gets a little bit more complicated, but I have a whole series of videos on natural law theory on my channel, so if you're interested in learning more, have a look at those. For now, thank you for watching, and see you next time.